I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru, and I'm sheltering next to the Be Quiet Dark Base Pro 900 case, which is fairly huge. On this side of the case I have a tempered glass panel, which is part and parcel of the kit that you get. It's not an accessory you have to pay extra for. I'm going to spin the case around. It's going to reflect like crazy, but let's at least show you what the glass looks like. So here we go. And doesn't that just look good? And then we'll turn it back and I'll take it off, and then you can have a look inside without all those lights being in your face. Well, there are some lights. As you saw, there are two strips of LEDs inside the chassis, but that's a different story, which we'll come to in just a moment. So off with the tempered glass panel. It's a plain piece of glass, 4 holes. That goes on the deck. Spin it round, and there you have it. So there are 2 models of case. There's the Dark Base 900, which is the basic model. That's £159 Inc VAT in the UK. And then there's this Dark Base Pro 900, which is £199 Inc VAT in the UK. Differences between the two boil down to, there's a Qi charger on top of the case on this panel. You can see all this in photos on Kit Guru, which is for wirelessly charging your phone if you have a correct phone. I happen to have a Google Nexus 5, which works with this panel. Nonetheless, it wasn't brilliant. Back panel, loads of sound deadening, as you'd expect from Be Quiet, and then you can clip in a couple of fans should you feel the urge. Now the Qi charger, I have a Google branded charger for my phone, and there's like a pad, and you drop the phone on, you can feel a magnet kind of gripping inside, and it holds it in place. You still have to jiggle it somewhat to get the thing aligned perfectly to charge, but it does work. This charger, the contact is really, you have to fiddle it around to get it so it just box into life. So I should be a customer who's interested in the Qi charger, and I must confess I'm not particularly. Other features, the tempered glass panel, and then this fan light control hub here. You get one with both models, but this is the enhanced version, so it has extra connections, including 2 connections for the RGB lights. Thus, one strip I've put here, they're sort of self-adhesive, so they connect to the hub, and then there's strips that are so long and they're rigid, they're like sort of sticks with some LEDs long length, as you have to position them, and I thought there and there are the obvious places, that's where I've gone for. And then on the front, you have a little control unit, so behind the stealth door, here at the top we have a slider for fan control, and this button here, let me show you, 5 presses, goes through. Red is the standard, then green, blue, sort of reddish. Is that off? That's off. And then back to sort of purplish, and then back to red. So there are 5 colours plus off. Works perfectly nicely. I like it. Not the most thrilling thing, but it's certainly better than having just the one fixed colour with a few modes. On the other hand, it would be nice if you had other options. So as lighting goes, it's not brilliant, but it's certainly not rubbish. I quite like it. The fan control hub, yep, fair enough. Tempered glass panel, on the other hand, as far as I'm concerned, that accounts for the meat and drink of the extra 40 quid between the 2 models. Oh. Let me just turn off the PC brutally, like so. And I can get inside the thing more easily without getting my fingers in fans. So, at the front of the case we've got 2 Be Quiet Silent Wings 3 fans, and at the rear we have a third, they're 140s. The mounting mechanism is all rubber, very clever, nicely done, really quiet fans, 6-pole motors, yada yada yada, they work superbly, really quiet. On the other hand, you can see at the back there's quite a lot of perforation going on, so air flows out quite easily, which, as you know, airflow can equal noise, but air flowing in is very neatly managed by all these sorts of stealth slots and so on under this mesh at the sides. Really like that. If I open this stealth door at the front one more time, and look at that, huge, great big air filter pulls out from the front. Sometimes we see these things are split in, one to the front, one to the rear. This is straight out the front, absolutely great. Put that back, and then we also have a front filter for those 2 fans. You'll notice that there is a third position there should you wish to add a third fan at the front. So Filtration very good, noise deadening material on the door as well, and the way it's all baffled noise, indirect airflow, absolutely good. The door, it sort of has that one poppy thing where it goes on and then it sort of swings around a bit. It's not brilliant. It looks nice. The clicking to close and clicking to open is not superb. Cosmetically, I like the case. It's got an aluminium skin on the front and the top, which is an absolute fingerprint magnet. In that respect, quite disastrous. Looks good, but fingerprints galore. I gave this case a good wipe down before I started the video, and to my mind, close up, it still looks messy. There are 3 colour choices as per usual: black with black, black with orange, black with silver. I've got black with black, which is slightly annoying because there are various fasteners, such as that one there. There's a rubber washer underneath. On the other cases, that rubber washer is coloured, which is actually quite handy for a thing I'm going to get to shortly, but we'll come to that soon. So this is black with black, which is very stealth. It works. Cooling is a huge part of this case. In addition to the business with the 3 installed fans, there's also the question of the cooling you can add. And the answer is you can add any blimming cooling that you want. Anything that you've ever even considered putting in a case will go in the Be Quiet 900. That's all there is to it. That cooler at the top there is a Kelvin S36 from Fractal Design, which is made by Alpha Cool or designed by Alpha Cool. It's a copper radiator. Huge, great thing. It almost vanishes into the chassis. But I have cheated slightly because I've removed the optical drive bay from up there because that blocks the front. If I hadn't removed this, you could put in a 280, 240, 140, 120 easy peasy, and the same at the front. But if you want to go 360, then you need to remove the optical drive bay. So there's one of those things. Also, here we have a Thermaltake 420 radiator. Let me just turn this slidey thing. There you go. You see, look. 420 at the front, 360 at the top, should you feel the urge. Why would you feel the urge? Well, it's cosmetic, isn't it? So there's lots of space. Now, in and of itself, I know that wouldn't impress you. It takes more than that. But there is actually a number of very clever things going on with the chassis. The motherboard tray, the motherboard tray itself, and then this section here with the output brackets and that fan actually comes out of the chassis in its entirety. Remove these 3 screws. Would that the washers were coloured, then you'd be able to really see it. And also these 3 screws and also these 3 screws. Release a bunch of cables. That's also part and parcel of the fun and games. And the whole thing comes out, which is nice in the sense that you can assemble your motherboard with the thing resting on these full rubber feet. So the motherboard tray lays down. You can then put your motherboard, your memory, processor, cooling system, graphics card and such like in place before you put it back in. That's the theory. I'm not won over by that because it's hard work. It weighs a lot, and I don't really feel any need to do that. Let's face it, if you want to assemble a motherboard and all the bits and pieces off system, as it were, you can just easily do it resting on the graphics card box or a motherboard box. We've all done it in our time. Works perfectly well. Hardware, incidentally, before I get any further, is a Gigabyte X99 UD4 motherboard and a Zeus R9 390 graphics card, chosen as much as anything because it's so huge. Some Corsair LPX Vengeance DDR4 memory, a Core i7 5820K processor, a Fractal Kelvin S36 liquid cooler, and then down the bottom a Seasonic Platinum 1200 watt power supply. All big chunky components, and they all just vanish into this chassis. Now, in addition to removing the optical drive bay, I've also cheated somewhat because I've also taken out these drive caddies, which live here. And they also live here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, all the way down this sort of ladder type of piece of steelwork. Now, the caddies are quite clever because you can either plug in a 3.5-inch drive, as you'd expect looking at the thing, or you can put a 2.5 in there and a 2.5 in there. You'll see there's holes on both sides. So you could, with those 7 caddies and this one stealth bay here, if you choose, install 15, count them, 2.5-inch drives. Or you can put 7 3.5s in plus a 2.5 on the back there, which is realistically way more space than anybody needs. So if that's your game, good luck to you. You've got all the options. Realistically, what you're actually supposed to do, of course, is choose the locations you want to put the caddies in. Now, I've taken them all out partly to show you the innards a bit more clearly, but also because I don't need them. I could put a couple of caddies in for the look of the thing. As you can see, I could easily have one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. Perhaps when I get up to this stage here, I'm into the realms of the Kelvin hoses, but I'm way clear of the Asus graphics cards, so I could put heaps of drives in this thing should I choose. It would of course mean the cabling would be even more messy than it is, but I'll come back to that. So motherboard tray comes out, motherboard tray goes in, hurrah, you say, great. More than that, each of those 9 screws has 3 mounting holes. Because the motherboard tray rises and falls depending on which position you mount it in, I've put this in the mid position, which means I've got loads of space above the motherboard, below the top of the case, which means that Kelvin cooler goes in quite nicely. Had I dropped it to the lowest position, I would have lost another output slot, which in this board would be a problem. Were I using a micro ATX or mini ITX, which sounds ridiculous in a full tower chassis, then I could have dropped it further, losing yet another slot, and I would have been golden, and I could have put frankly any cooler on the market in the roof of the case. So options for cooling, there's loads of length, but in terms of thickness of radiators, they've accommodated that of Be Quiet by allowing you to drop the motherboard tray. Very cleverly done. One of the consequences of that design is that ordinarily this would simply clash with the power supply. You'd end up with the motherboard and the output slots sitting on the power supply. What they've done is they've moved the power supply forward. It mounts on this bracket here and a corresponding one here. And then between this plug here, what you have is a short length of cable that fills this space here. You can, if you choose, flip the power supply over, in which case the cable just goes across. That's all straightforward. Or you can in fact flip the bracket over. When you move the motherboard tray up and down, you have to fill the gap that appears. So this cover that's here, there's a corresponding one there which I put in. They were both originally at the bottom. I moved the motherboard tray down one, which opened a gap up. I moved a cover to the top. Were to drop it further, I'd have to move this up as well. So Be Quiet has thought this through. There is, however, another huge aspect to this motherboard tray malarkey, which is this. If I choose, I can take this drive tower, let's call it plate, out. It's screwed in. I undo a bunch of screws and I can then put it in instead on this side. Now you can see there are no threaded holes to put any screws in. That's because this black thing here and this black thing here is actually a piece of sticky tape that covers a bunch of holes. It's to prevent the glass, when you put the glass panel on, it's to prevent any glass to metal contact. So you peel that off, which is a bit shoddy because essentially once you've done that it's not going to go back on, and ideally you want to put that sort of sticky tape on this side of the case. Anyway, you peel that off to reveal the holes, you move the drive plate across. You then take out these 4 threaded studs, put them in this side because now your glass panel is going to go on this side because you're inverting everything, so this becomes the back. And then you can take your motherboard tray and invert it, mounting it here. So everything's upside down. It's cleverly done, and I don't quite understand who'd want to do that. The closest thing that Be Quiet comes to an explanation is if your desk has your PC mounted or positioned to your left. Fair enough. I can think of many ways of getting around that particular snag that don't involve me rebuilding the entire blooming PC upside down. I mean, frankly, you might just well take the thing and turn it upside down. If you haven't got an optical drive, why not? So that's a thing. And what it says to me is this. When you look on KitGuru and look at the photos, the chassis, when it's stripped down, you take off this front cover and the top cover, which is clip in place, and you take out the bottom cover, which has 2 screws, and it just pulls away. The actual basic chassis is just a steel frame. Then you take out the drive caddies, as I've already done here, and the optical drive bay, which is easy peasy, and you take out the motherboard tray, which has 9 screws, and what you're left with is an open frame with this drive plate in place. And then do some more screws and you can flip it across. And I think someone has looked at this and gone, you know, it wouldn't be difficult to be able to invert the whole thing. And they're quite correct. I just think they've kind of gone, they've tried to think, like, what's a unique feature that we can add or something really different? And they've achieved that end, no two ways about it. But I just don't know I'm particularly bothered about it. So the inversion thing, it works, but whereas the rise and fall motherboardy tray thing I like a lot. Then again, you could get around that really easily by making the case 50mm taller and leaving a bunch of space above the motherboard. But there we go. Wouldn't be as much fun, would it? So, overall, the Dark Base Pro 900 is a clever case. It is quite large. It flows a lot of air, it's really quiet, the 3 stock fans work well, the way that the airflow is convoluted and such like, I like a lot. The rise fall motherboard tray, very clever, works well. There are a few wrinkles I've had to do to get around it, such as the power supply brackets and so on and so forth. That works. The motherboard inversion thing, I'm not that sold on that. It's clever, but I think it's almost too clever by half. But okay. The features that make up the Pro rather than the Basic are okay, but the Qi charger is not that impressive. The fan light hub is all right. Compared to some other cases we've seen recently, it's a bit better than they did. It's still not brilliant, but it's pretty good. The tempered glass panel is a winner. So the fan light hub is essentially a freebie. So that's all good. So £199 I can live with. You're getting quite a lot for your money, including some clever ideas. That's fine. I'm not impressed by the fact there's no power supply cover because the cabling is a bit messy, because they've had to make the thing such that the motherboard tray can rise and fall, and that's tricky. Also, the cable management grommets as a result are not that brilliantly positioned, and the fact is you have got a whole bunch of space at the top, which is quite handy in a way for feeding cables through, but it does mean that everything's a bit kind of on show and exposed. So were you to leave the motherboard tray in the conventional raised position, it gets a bit tidier, but then almost what's the point of this case at that point? That is one of the prime features, is the fact you can put a really chunky radiator in. Overall, very pleased with this chassis. Not perfect. The manual user guide needs some help because it's covering a bazillion options and it really struggles to do it succinctly and neatly, but you know, that's just one of those things. Overall, the biggest issue with it is the lack of power supply cover and the resultant messy cabling, but Be Quiet has done a good job with the Dark Base Pro 900. I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru.